So this is the first in what will hopefully be a short series of videos about collaborating online. I've, over the past few months on Instagram, met a number of talented and creative people that I've just met by posting my content and commenting and reaching out to people that I'm motivated. Some collaborations have kind of come together in this one project, and hopefully it'll be motivating. That is not the word I'm looking for. Words. Hopefully it'll give you some ideas as a musician, just like how you can work with people that you might not even know, maybe you've never met. The first person here that I follow, his name is Art, and he posts a lot of really cool videos of broken Russian synthesizers, old vintage synthesizers that just sound incredible. So one day he had posted that he's got some samples of some broken synths. So I reached out to him, and he sent me a link to download some stuff. I'm going to share an Ableton project here. One of the files in the batch he sent is just kick and squealy sounding thing here. And you can just hear it's crackling, and it's got noisy components, but it's cool. I love stuff like this. So what I did is I just grabbed a short section of the kick and sped it up to the BPM of this project, which is just a typical 120 BPM. So the kick now sounds like this. Down here, you can see all I've got on it is a simple drum bus. I'm overdriving it a little. I'm pumping the transients up a bit so you can still hear crackle between each kick. And I've lifted the low end, the boom. So it's a little beefier and it's a little quicker. I'm going to open this group. It's called Everything Else. So basically what I've got going here is this kick, which is called kick. Is being used to trigger a sidechain compressor on all of the other layers I've got here. I'll show you what that does a little later on. I'll grab just tiny bits here. So like this, for instance. And just see what it sounds like if I slow it down. Yeah, that sounds kind of gastrointestinal. Through this process, I will typically just, mess this stuff up. By hitting Apple J, you can join things together. I'll go through and just isolate little sections, move it around, drop this guy way down. By default, the warp mode is on beats. But if you start messing around with different modes, you can get some pretty interesting textures going on here. On the track itself, I'll start building effect chains. So like in this instance, let's maybe put just a simple glue compressor. I've got in my favorites, I think. This guy is so simple to use, but you can get some great results from it. You can really lift the noisy sections up without the loud sections blasting your eardrums out. And I'm just making this up as I go. I don't actually have this in the final song, but in this case, there's some like high energy that's really ear-piercing that I would typically find, right there at the end. I might just do a heavy-handed roll-off of the high end. And then for something like this, if I knew I wasn't going to be using this as a bass sound, I may do another heavy-handed just roll off of the low end. Now, it doesn't sound like anything much, but once you start finding repetitions and rhythms within a specific sound, like let me chop this down to 1/4 note, I think is where I'm at. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to duplicate this, and this might sound like shit, but let's see. It sounds like a broken satellite. But you can obviously keep going with your effects here. So like if I put, let's say, what might be interesting? Well, reverb fixes anything. Put one of my favorite reverbs. It's Valhalla Vintage Verb. Not sponsored. But look, it just opened this sucker up, even with the default preset. It's beautiful. All right. So something like this, I'm going to join these together. Even if you wind up working on a sample for like half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, might wind up just being a texture way, 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 way in the background of the final composition. It's just about, finding these neat little pieces, bits and pieces, that ultimately turn into these cool surprises. And then what I will do a lot of times is down below here, I'll go into the envelope section, turn on the envelopes, and go into the clip and mess around with the transposition. Usually I'll try to do this to beat, but you can get some interesting effects by messing around down here too. Right? Cool. So with that in mind, it gives a bit more context to the bass line here that I'm about to show. Unfortunately, I didn't capture the process of creating this clip. But it sounds like this. And again, this is just clips that I took and manipulated from that recording of that broken Russian synthesizer. Let me move my face away. Bye. So you can see down below the effect chain. So the first thing in the chain's a drum bus. Again, I'm just driving the signal a little bit. I pumped up the low end. Here's a glue compressor. Again, it's just bringing up some of the lower sounds and keeping the highs down a little. Here's a decapitator plugin. It's like an overdrive. I'm just smashing it. And then here is a little chain that I created called a hard tremolo. Basically, what this will do, if I turn the depth all the way up, you can hear it's just chopping it to the beat here. Let me turn on the metronome. There's different options in there, but that's a whole nother video in its own. It's being powered by this guy here, the Tremolator. I love this. Obviously, I'm a big fan of sound toys as well. And then at the end, I've got an EQ, just again to boost these subby low-end areas, and I took out some ugly frequencies I didn't like. Let me show you what happens when this is mixed with the kick. Right, pretty cool. Now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the tremolo away. Now I'm gonna take the kick off. So you might notice that when the kick is on, the bass is now kind of breathing underneath. It's getting out of the way. because I've got this compressor on this group. This compressor is affecting everything else in this group. It's it's not a way to treat every song, but in this particular case, I liked the way it sounded. So let me keep showing some more of the tracks here. Anything in this project that is this red color is from the broken Russian synths. So the white colors I'll show you after I get through all the synth stuff. So here's one I just called Hissy Scratch. This is absolutely cranked up fast and chopped and reversed, and bits are slowed down. And then I've gone through and taken all the little clicks and crunches and quantized them so that they land on beats. So it doesn't necessarily make sense by itself, but in the context of the full piece, it starts to make sense. So let me turn the effect chain back on here. You can see any of these buttons that have a red dot next to it. That means that I've gone in and recorded some movement. So it's gone from this to this. All right, the next one down is called an insect scratch. And here's another example of just glitchy, nasty sound that I've just looped into a beat. Now this micro shift here, if you're wearing headphones, you can see that it just opened the sound up. It kind of like spread it across the stereo field. Here's without. Here's with. It's just like a cool ASMR feeling. And then with the EQ, I treated the EQ. This one's called Fuzzy Stutter. And this one works well because of the automation I've got going on. So that's all this one is doing. Again, these all make sense when they start combining. So like, for instance, if I take this and mix it with the insect scratch, the hissy, bring the kick in, and the bass. I could just bang my hat into the microphone, but I could just sit and listen to this nonsense for hours. So here is where I used an instance of Simpler. So if you're not familiar with Ableton, Simpler is the built-in kind of like sampling engine. And what I did is I dragged one of the broken Russian synth samples that I was sent. The original sample sounds like this. If I zoom in here, you can see that every time I hit a key, it's only going to play a teeny tiny fraction of the sound of the waveform here. And it's also going to loop. So if you look up here, you can see this long bars, one long MIDI note, which is like holding a key down on a keyboard. And then within the options in the back end here, I've got the sound spreader, like really opening it up across the stereo feed. I did some detuning so that it matches closer to this crazy bass sound. So that's cool, but I put an arpeggiator on, so this is basically arpeggiating the note. And I've got the gate, I've got some automation recorded on the gate, so it kind of brings the notes, the staccato up and down. So that's fun. So here's a plugin that I really like. It's called Sketch Cassette. the interface is cool. So this adds some grunge to sounds. So let me turn this on. So I'm basically driving the signal, but it's not like your typical overdrive. It's got more of a worn tape sound to it. And then I brought my trusty glue compressor in. It's giving us a stronger attack. So here on the EQ, I'm just rolling out the low end so it doesn't get in the way of the bass line. And then at the end, I've got an instance of erosion, and what this does is it brings in some cool high-end noise. You mix that with everything else. So yeah, it at this point is coming together. This one, so this guy sounds like this. So you can see that I've selected a different part of the signal. I've also added a filter down here to the sound, cranked up the resonance. It's got the same arpeggiator doing the same thing. It's got sketch cassette. I don't think the glue compressor is necessary, but I do want to keep the EQ on just to make sure that the low end is rolled out. And then erosion. There it is. So you mix these two together and they complement each other. The third one down here, arpeggiator's still going. The notes are harmonies for the parts that are already going. Same exact section of the sound wave and the simplers being selected for this one. Get a glue compressor in there. It really helps beef up the sound. EQ8 to roll those low ends down. And this is where the magic happens. This is another instance of the Valhalla vintage verb. And then another instance of the sketch cassette at the end here to kind of grunge up the sound. You can really hear how the dropouts are just making it sound crusty. I love it. All right, so that's everything from the synth pack. Let me go down the tracks and unsolo them one by one. So got the kick, got the bass, hissy scratch, insects, fuzzy stutter, first synth, second, and the third. So the other week I recorded a video of me being an idiot. Yeah. And I get a comment from, I learned later his name is Daniel, from Reflect Audio, who just said, sounds awesome. It would make for a badass little plugin. And we've been chatting, and he's a really cool guy, and he builds a lot of custom plugins and cool little VST instruments. So I went back to that dumpster, and Let's go record a sample pack. So I sent Daniel a huge collection of bangs and hits, and he's working on putting those sounds into a instrument. I'm psyched about that. It's going to be pretty cool. And here's some kicks. So it's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing the instrument that he builds out of these. But what I did is I just had one single hit, and it's just answering the kick drum. So I have automation written on the Valhalla plugin. So if I move over here, if I click this little automation channel, you can see the mix. I've got it kind of ramps up. It jumps up and then ramps back down in places. So up, and then it's dry. And then I also have automation for a short delay that's bouncing it on some 16th notes. I also made one more track with that same exact hit, and this is basically just playing quick 16th notes, and it sounds like this. And you can see down here again, I've got automation on the EQ. I've got the drum bus that's really driving it hard, and I've got the transients, the volume of the transients turned way up. And then I've got an auto pan here. You can hear it going from left to right over and over. And then I've got, again, my Valhalla reverb with automation. And then another thing I've got going on in the clip level is I've also automated some of the transposition to change the note. You can watch here as the transposition changes, the note changes. And this kind of matches with what the bass is doing. And the synth line. So let's turn it all on. So it's at a spot where I'm digging where it's going. It still needs structure, it still needs to become an actual song. And where the collaboration there comes in is through another really talented person that I met through Instagram. His name is John, and he's a member of this band Night Glitter. He reached out to me and asked if I would want to work on a collaboration with him and the other member of the band. So this track is going to wind up taking on a brand new life, and I will be documenting that process too. So I hope you found this interesting, and if you want to see how the project continues on, subscribe to this channel, and I'll have more videos as we continue on with the track. I'll see you next